We're good to go.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yes. Apologies.
So thank you, everybody, for joining today. Sounds like we have a good group of people online as well as in person. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we gather today on the ancestral homelands of the Nisenan people. Sacramento was a gathering place for many local tribes who had lived in the Central Valley and the foothills for generations and were the original stewards of this land. We would like to acknowledge the Southern Mining people to the north, the Valley and Plains Miwok peoples to the south of the American River, and the Putwin Wintu peoples to the west of the Sacramento River. Please join me in expressing our deepest respect and gratitude for our Indigenous neighbors and for their enduring care and protection of our shared lands and waterways. If you are joining us in person, I would like to make a quick note that there is a badge near the door. If you do need to step out to use the restroom, please take a badge with you so that you can get back into the room. And now, John Whistler, a representative from the Office of Energy Infrastructure Safety's Business Services Unit, will review the safety and evacuation information for our in-person attendees. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, everybody. Good morning. Thanks for that land acknowledgement. I just wanted to go over a few safety precautions we need to take for everybody here in the room in case an emergency happens. Fires are unlikely, but as we know, they have to be at least inspected. If one happens while we're here, there's a fire extinguisher over here on the wall, and the hallway is lined with fire extinguishers as well. If it's a larger fire, like the fire extinguisher, everybody needs to exit. As you noticed by coming up the stairs or the elevator, we're on the second floor. So we need to get down to the first floor and exit out either side of the building and go east down P Street to Roosevelt Park. Everybody in the building will be headed that direction. So just follow the group and we'll reconvene there. If there is a heart-related incident, I did not notice an AED on this floor. So we're gonna have to get one from the first floor. So immediately call 911 and send somebody down to the first floor for an AED. Other than that, I hope you have a safe and productive meeting today, and I will get back to you.
We will now review audience participation and the public comment procedure. You're in person. Those attending who wish to provide public comment, please request to speak when the public comment is called. Provide your name and organization before your comment. For those joining via the webinar who wish to provide public comment, you may press the raise hand button in the webinar or dial *5 to be placed in a queue. When your name is called, you may unmute yourself using *6 and provide your name, organization, and your comment. My name is Jessica Resett. I am an Education and Outreach Ambassador. We're going to pause for the technical update.
So Jessica, you will need to do it because you're the organizer for the meeting.
Thank you for bearing with us, everybody. Hybrid meetings offer us the opportunity to engage additional people, but also for additional technical difficulties.
Okay, we can continue.
Thank you for your patience, everybody. We are ready to continue. I'm going to turn it over to Linda.
Thank you, Jessica. First of all, I am in the Johnson Board of Education at this meeting. Focus on going to send our creative thoughts out to the plan, same stuff. Who are done with this. Thank you. We have worked with staff to develop discussion topics related to coordinated statewide education. And we're looking forward to hearing the perspectives and thoughts today. That will kick off the coordinated statewide education outreach workshop series planned for 2025. Our topics of discussion will include common topics of underground infrastructure damages, the effectiveness of current excavation safety training, access to excavation training, and areas of improvement in excavation safety training. Before we get started, I'd like to share some background on the Underground Safety Board. California Underground Safety Board was created by the Big Safe Act of 2016 to investigate accidents, develop excavation safety standards, and coordinate education outreach programs. The city to facilitate communication between excavators and the operators of such installations, determining the cause of the accidental begins, and of course, California Big Safe Act. One of the board's strategies objectives is to improve compliance by reaching parties in an effective way. The California Government Code Section 4216.12 requires the board to coordinate and educate outreach activities and encourage safe excavation practices. Today, our goal is to bring excavators and operators together, share insight, foster long-term collaboration, and encourage safe excavation practices. I encourage all attendees to contribute their expertise, listen to diverse perspectives, engage in constructive discussion. But I'm minded that, I remember, I know Marty's not here, she was one of the first folks that started the education to build us staff. And so we put a lot of good effort and hard work into it. So I want to continue to make the problem and work that we put together.
Make it better. So we want to ensure that we get to the objective and get to the mission of safety excavation for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Johnson.
Just
We'll start with a discussion about the common causes of damage and how damages in California compare to damages at the national level. The Common Ground Alliance 2023 Damage Information Reporting Tool, commonly called the DIRT report, lists the top 6 underground infrastructure damage root causes at the national level as 1, failure to notify 811, 2, excavator failed to maintain clearance, 3, facility not marked due to locator error, 4, improper excavation practice not listed elsewhere, 5, marked inaccurately due to locator error, and 6, excavator dug prior to verifying marks by potholing. Our first question is, are these the top damages reflected in excavation projects within California? Or are there other types of causes that need to be included in our discussion? We will begin with in-person comments, followed by webinar comments. Please provide your name and organization before your comment. Those attending via webinar who wish to provide public comment may press the raise hand button in the webinar. Do that now if you have some comments ready. Or you can dial *5 and you'll be placed in the queue. When your name is called, you will be able to unmute yourself and provide your comment. At this time, I would like to invite in-person participants to speak if they have any comments.
I'll kick it off if that's okay. Thank you, Jessica.
Perfect.
Thank you, Member Johnson, for putting this on. Todd Bloomstein, representing the Southern California Contractors Association. We're an association of about 300 members, excavation contractors. They're all union contractors. And I think it's really obvious that from our perspective, that the number one issue is failure to contact 811. That has been throughout the discussions in the legislature and here, that's the primary reason. For us, I think it would also be improper marked inaccurately would be for our contractors, the main reason why they're hitting underground utilities. But as far as any additional reasons, I can't see any that are all Jessica. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional in-person comments?
Eric Mesker from Charge EPC. The failure to notify, and I'm also a participant in Common Ground Alliance, so there's been a lot of in-depth conversations about that. And one of the things they keep focusing on is what they're calling professional contractors. And I think that needs to still be broken out further, because when you look at excavators that actually are working in the street, most of them have the understanding, and if you were to actually be able to segment out from landscapers, fence builders, homeowners, you'd see a different picture, and it make it a little probably more effective to be able to target training towards those particular groups. Because I can tell you from my perspective, we're getting tons of notifications from you, from CGA, from Carga on safe dig and calls before you dig notification. So I don't know if there's a way to be able to look at that and draw some more of that information out to be able to target that training a little bit more. And then the other one that really perks my interest is the last one, number 6. Excavators done prior to verifying marks by potholes. We get a time frame that we have to wait for those validation marks. And the law is very clear nowadays that I have to have proper or positive notification, but that still isn't as clear to a lot of contractors out there. And the fact that they were incentivized differently. It's all about making money and doing a job safely. But at the same time, when I mobilize out to a job and I don't have complete marks, that costs my company, my team, and my employees time and money. So getting a partnership more effectively with operators and facility owners in that arena to understand the impact of not having those marks in that time frame, or not having, it's not even so much marks, more positive communication, not just being dependent on a ticketing system, but then an actual relationship and communication with those excavators to help minimize that impact across the board. Thank you.
Josh Smith with Charge EPC. My only comment is the failure to notify, just like Eric mentioned. If you did break it out into contractors and other types of people that are doing work, homeowners, landscaping, you're going to see that probably 99% are landscaping and homeowners, which then I would see that you guys would be able to put the money or power of training towards that group and not waste it on the contractors and the excavators who currently basically can't survive if they don't know that one. There won't be necessarily wrong if they're not following 811.
In the spirit of discussion, can I respond? I think Eric hits a point that's spot on with regards to the term excavator, right? You've got an excavator who could be a homeowner putting in some flowers in the backyard or doing some landscaping, all the way to some of the biggest contractors in the state, right? That employ 1,000 people. Those are all considered excavators, right? From the extreme. So I would agree, breaking down into the commercial contractor versus just excavator would be helpful to see this.
Thank you. Are there any additional in-person comments? Okay. Rain, are there any comments from the webinar?
Yes, our first comment comes from Michael Worcester.
Michael, you can unmute and provide your comment.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Michael, we can't hear you.
How about now? You hear me okay? Hello?
We are going to adjust the volume in the room so that we can
Okay.
all hear you better.
I
That's just
appreciate
one
that.
moment.
Okay. Sound a little better now?
Perfect.
That's great, Michael.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Great, thank you. Michael, appreciate it, the time to speak. It's Michael Worcester. I'm with USIC. We're a locate company. I wanted to kind of add a little bit on more specific. I think we should add a little a little bit to number 3, facilities not marked due to locator error. To be a little more specific about California, I had recently done some research on one of the issues we're having of locator technician shortages. And I think that's a main point of one of our issues in California is that a lot of the damage that are occurring from locate companies not being able to keep up, even utilities in general, not keeping up with the ticket loads, the really high demand of ticket loads. And what we found in our research is, from the cost of living, high cost of living, and comparative low pay for the technicians, along with some poor training, has contributed to a lot of the low or the high turnaround and difficulty in retaining good talent for cable locators. I just wanted to add that to number 3, more specifically, since the national doesn't really reflect exactly what's happening in California.
Thank you, Michael.
You're welcome.
Any other additional webinar comments?
Yes, our next comment comes from Ian Benares.
Ian, you can unmute yourself and provide your comment.
Good morning. Ian Benares from Pacific Gas.
Ian, we're unable to hear you.
Yeah, it happened to Michael, so I got remuted. Can you hear me now?
Thank you.
Thank you. Ian Benares, Pacific Gas and Electric. Yeah, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but double clicking on number 1, failure to notify 811. That's a really wide tree. It makes up, I think, 46 or 47% of the damages that we experience at PG&E. And the reasons for not contacting 811 are really wide and diverse. We touched on kind of landscaping, and but additionally, we see a lot of professional excavators make similar mistakes. They feel that they can work under the 811 ticket of a different excavator. They see marks on the ground and they believe that all the facilities are marked, but not having an 811 ticket, not having those positive confirmations, and not having contact information with the utility providers so they can reach out and inform excavators of certain hazards in the area. I believe all kind of contribute to damages, and the root of the cause obviously is not contact the 811 call center, not getting their information on file, and not providing that avenue for communication.
Thank you. Rain, are there additional comments from the webinar?
There are no further comments.
Thank you.
Jessica, I'd like to add to that, with the failure to notify 811. One of the biggest things I used to hear, I still hear, is that when you ask why the facility got damaged, it's either that your facility's too shallow. It should be, it should have been this, and it's not that. And I think we're using a lot of old knowledge that's not prevalent at this point in time. The utilities usually, when they begin back in time, if it said it was supposed to be at 18 inches, it was placed there, or 24 inches with gas and sewer. But now it's wherever you can find a spot. And so folks who are not professionals don't know that. They just know based on their experience that, oh, in the old days, you used to do it this way and that's where it is. So I'm going to go ahead and dig. So it's a lack of education, of awareness of what standards that we don't use anymore that we should probably need to go back to. So kind of agree with the 811 and the reason for not calling it the ticket. So.
Thank you.
Jessica, do you have another hand raised?
Great.
We have a hand raised from Alejandra de la Cruz Garcia.
Alejandro, you can unmute yourself and provide your comment. We don't hear you yet.
Please unmute your microphone.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
It was a little tricky to unmute. I don't know why. But this is Alexandra Garcia. If it's shorter, from AT&T, the subrogation department. We work hand by hand with the USIC and so others. In this case, and what I wanted like to come close to what I've heard upon these root causes and so on my experience, what we hear a lot is like these well, we definitely do have very much of these claims that are based on contractors or homeowners or so that are not being able to expose the line, right? Like it's like maybe sometimes too confident that they're not going to hit a line, and sometimes you just hit the line, and difficulty is sometimes also to keep the lines on the 18 inches deep or what the legal requirement deep on these lines means because of weather conditions and so many other things that can happen, right? And that can make a line arise close to surface, maybe not that close, but can make it arise. So sometimes I believe that we have also to share this information to the people, to the contractors, to the crews that actually do the digging, in what means to be careful digging around the location. And once you have the line cleared, you can go on, right? I believe that that's important to mention. That could really um, help us, all of us, to avoid this kind of damages. At the end of it, our business is not um, uh, collecting from damages, but avoiding them, right? Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Any additional webinar comments, Wayne?
Yes, we have another comment from Marjorie Milfora.
Great. Marjorie, you can unmute and provide your comments. We don't hear you yet, Marjorie.
Marjorie has lowered her hand.
Thank you. Marjorie has lowered her hand. Hopefully we'll hear from her later instead. We do understand it sounds like there might be difficult for unmuting, so we will be patient and let you know when we are able to hear you. But please continue to raise your hands and contribute to this discussion. Are there any additional? Yes, we have an additional in-person comment.
Eric Metzger, Charge EPC. I think I'm already answering the next question down, but it's one of the things that isn't included in that list, which is probably more specific for my work in California, because we work out of different states as well, is utilities and organizations that are not participating in the USA system at all, such as Caltrans and municipalities that aren't being required to participate. That becomes a significant challenge to be able to work around, especially as Marshall had pointed out, these congested roadways nowadays. That's really becoming more and more impactful on how we're able to safely dig and excavate. Thank you.
Thank you.
You have another hand raised by Nathan Cathcart.
Nathan, you can unmute yourself and provide your comments.
Hello, this is Nathan Cathcart. I work for the City of Los Angeles in the emergency sewer repair and emergency storm drain. I have specific comments about emergency tickets and failure to enter private property. What I notice on the markings is it's difficult to access private property, and oftentimes we'll have the public right-of-way marked, but the markings will not carry over into the private property because homeowner wasn't home when they went, locked gates, etc. It has a very much a negative impact. I would also indicate the requirements of the USA Dig in terms of marking where your work is going to occur. Sometimes on the emergency tickets, we don't know where the work will occur. And we will mark block to block. Some utility locators have resisted the idea that we are marking block to block, that we're supposed to be more focused on where we are actually performing the work. And lastly, all the abandoned lines that exist in the city, county, state are resulting in false positives. You'll have a marking, you'll dig down, there will be a pipe that will indicate based on experience and knowledge, okay, this is going to be my water line, gas line, etc. And there will be another pipe located somewhere else, and that is that can have the potential to create a dangerous situation. That is all on my comments.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that? When you say, in your experience, when you're talking about abandoned lines,
yes,
are you seeing the marks with an A and a circle, or are we talking about lines that are unmarked or unclaimed? Old lines that may not belong to anyone and were the owner or who owns or
it would be
maintains them?
It would be the other, not marked with an A. I'm specifically speaking to, I'll have an underground map. We do our best for, figuring out what's going on, but especially in the city of Los Angeles where I operate, it's a constant discovery of, I guess we're going to find out when we dig.
Okay, thank you.
Does that make sense? Yes.
Yeah.
May I ask a question too of the city of Los Angeles? The 4216 does not require the marking of gravity-driven sewer lines. My understanding is only pressurized sewer lines are marked. And so question for the city of Los Angeles, do they mark gravity, not pressurized sewer lines?
No, they do not mark, but the GIS system Navigate LA is readily available to anybody. It's an online platform. If you just write it down, Navigate LA, you can go in there and you can apply a GIS map, which will both locate gravity-fed systems and pressurized systems for sewer, and it will also locate storm drains. So that information is readily available, which is why it will in fact not be marked.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And what was your name again? Sorry.
My name is Nathan Cathcart. I'm a construction inspector with the Bureau of Contract Administration, which is part of the, and I'm in part of the emergency sewer storm drain response, which is we hire private contractors to come in and perform emergency work. Also, we handle water main breaks with the associated damage to the infrastructure.
Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Lane, are there additional comments from the webinar at this time?
Yes, we do have a hand raised by Ian Veneers.
Okay. You need to Great, go ahead. We can hear you.
Thank you. Hello again. That's a good previous comment as well. And on the subject of delineations, there are a lot of errors that locators make when responding to USA tickets. But some of them can be mitigated, or we could get a layer of backup from the excavator if certain kind of best practices are adopted. And I hope this doesn't come off as appearing to shift blame or to absolve ourselves of responsibility. But simple practices like writing footage next to delineations to help locators identify end delineations is extremely valuable, especially when you have multiple overlapping 811 tickets. And, just being as descriptive as possible when creating 811 tickets really does help alleviate confusion. We've seen many of our locators make mistakes when interpreting an 811 ticket. We maintain the expectation that our locators reach out to the excavator if there is a question about delineations or the work area. However, providing additional information up front would reduce the rate of those mistakes by our locators. So just to kind of maybe shine a light on the idea that best practices in both directions can help both parties on both sides of the equation.
You're saying better communication between the excavator 811 and the locator?
Yeah, and I hate to keep on saying it, but that does apply to a lot of the things that we talk about.
I think this brings a point back to what Michael Worcester had mentioned earlier about the ticket loads. And, from a locating company perspective or utilities, they're not staffed for large, big jobs that are big projects. And I think that something needs to happen up front, early in advance, so that they can staff up and be prepared for these type of things. As most locate companies and utilities are there to spend whatever expense money, minimum expense money as possible to perform the job or the task at hand. And one of the things that the excavator is looking for is for people to get out there and market right now because they have a task to do and get the work completed and cost to them. So I think, again, we go back to communication. If you got a huge project, communicating with one another to kind of work it out where everyone can be on the same page. So I think communication lends to each and every one of these items as the root cause for some of these damages, not most of them.
So this has been a great discussion. Are there any additional comments before we move on to our next topic? No hands raised, Rain?
At this time, there are no hands raised.
Thank you. So our next topic of discussion relates to the effectiveness of excavation safety training. We will ask 3 questions to evaluate the effectiveness of excavation safety training that is currently being delivered. The first question for this topic is, what approaches or methods are being used to deliver or receive excavation safety training? As a reminder, we will begin with our in-person attendees, followed by webinar comments. And we do ask that you provide your name and organization before your comment. If you're on the webinar, your task is to use the raise hand button or dial *5 to be placed into the queue. And then you can unmute yourself, hopefully, and provide your comment when your name is called. So at this time, I would like to invite in-person participants to provide their comments.
Well, currently, from what we see as an estimator, it's both web-based and in-person. Usually, depending on your client, as an estimator you're working for, has requirements that are web-based. In the industry of underground and excavation, I would say probably 75% of the workforce burns a lot better with hands-on. So I know where we are currently working, we sort of mimic SoCal Gas, where we like to utilize hands-on training for a week or so, along with web-based training before we release them out to get in the field training. It seems to work. Not all excavators can afford to do that. I wish it would be more that way, but everybody's out there to make money, so a lot of people do not.
Eric Musker. I think one of the other things that's added is like he touched on, A lot of contractors can't afford to invest that amount of time, but the morning tail boards are an extremely effective approach. And if you couple that with some material that you guys could develop that could help educate not just the foreman and the leadman, but all the crew members on locate identifications and, you know, proper potholing procedures, that could go a long way to helping improve that. Thank you.
Again, Todd Bloomstein with the Southern California Contractors Association. Again, I represent the Association of Contractors, so you know, the morning meetings I'm not familiar with, but at a higher level, you know, there is at least the CSLE on the contractors test. I believe there was either legislation or some type of effort to make sure there was at least one 811 question on that test, at least to heighten awareness for contractors and the qualifiers. Whether or not that's truly effective is another discussion. But most importantly for us, for union contractors, remember, our union workers should have gone through, and most do, through an apprenticeship program or through a training program. The one I'm most familiar with is the Azusa Laborer School, and there's an entire curriculum from you know, safe excavations, one of them, to concrete cutting, to a whole bunch of training that is developed specifically for that worker. And I think it's a rather rigorous, physically rigorous training, as well as knowledge base as well, classroom training as well. The whole intent as the employer of the workers, of the union members, is to make sure that laborer can go from the training school and we can put him in the field, that he knows everything, he or she knows everything that they need to, so they can go out and be effective. So if you're looking for, you know, potential curriculum or partners, I would definitely check with some of the union apprenticeship training programs across the state. There's quite a few of them.
Thank you. Any additional in-person comments at this time? Okay, Brian, are there any webinar comments at this time?
Yes, first up, we have Ian Beniers.
Great. Ian, you can unmute and provide your comment.
Thank you. Hello again. Something that we're currently performing in terms of delivering excavation safety training is in-person workshops with our damage investigators. We usually meet the excavator at their company. We try to address kind of all levels of personnel within the company, not just management or supervision, but field employees, the equipment operators themselves. And we'll usually have a PowerPoint presentation. We bring along a projector and a screen, so we can kind of do it anywhere. And lots of kind of hands-on like examples of damages. We'll bring in damaged pipe. We'll show, you know, how thick the wall is of a 4-inch plastic HDPE pipe, yet how easy it can still be to kind of puncture it with regular tools. And, you know, putting those hands-on displays in people's hands really, you know, kind of drives the message home. And additionally, we'll show kind of videos from damages that involve like fires and explosions to really kind of get the message across that natural gas is a dangerous commodity to be working next to. And what's also really helped and we provide this free of charge as well, of course. This is, you know, in our best interest to prevent future damages. We've seen a dramatic reduction in the, you know, 5+ years that we've been doing this, in the number of excavators who have multiple damages on our lines. We used to have dozens that had, you know, damages within the double digits in a given year, and that number has really dropped off significantly. And so another tool that we've also used to kind of get our foot in the door when delivering these trainings is if an excavator does have a damage on our lines that they're going to be responsible for paying, we'll offer like a 10% bill reduction in exchange for conducting these safe excavation trainings with the excavator, usually at their company. So those are kind of some of the tools that we've seen, and we believe it's made a really huge difference in just increasing the level of knowledge, the awareness of the hazards, and ultimately a reduction in damages.
Thank you. Rain, are there additional webinar comments?
Yes, next up we have Michael Worcester.
Michael, you can unmute and provide your comment.
Okay, hopefully unmuted quick there.
You
Can you
did.
hear me?
We can hear
All
you.
right, great. I'm going to put a different hat on. This is and speak on behalf of California Regional Common Ground Alliance and some of the success we had with our public events. You know, I think a good strategy and getting some conversation started within organizations is to have a public event that is compelling and interesting. We demonstrate a gas and power strike, a mock strike, and then afterwards we have a quick interactive 5 training sessions to kind of go over the 5 steps of safe excavation. And it's not comprehensive training, but what it does do with our invitees, it starts conversations that they bring back to their organizations. And we find that we partner with other trade organizations and regulatory bodies such as the Underground Safe Board. And it's been very effective. So I would encourage other trade organizations or companies, excavators in particular, to either get involved with these events or plan their own events. But we've been doing it for quite a while and we've had a lot of success. In fact, we'll continue to do them because of the success. So thank you.
Thank you. Are there any additional webinar comments?
Yes. Next up, we have Marjorie Notor.
Okay. Marjorie, can unmute. We don't hear you yet.
Can you hear me now?
We can. Welcome.
Oh, yay! Yeah. Well, good morning, everyone. I appreciate you allowing me to speak. This is Marjorie Del Toro with EHS International, Inc. and previous board member. I'm really excited to see this obviously topic. I'm very passionate about this and have been for the last 7-8 years, actually 30 years that I've been in industry. But one of the things that I'm missing here that I don't see is obviously we have to keep in mind that we are in the state of California where we have multilingual, boots on the ground, that we have to make sure that we're communicating with them effectively. And one thing that I see missing a lot is that people don't realize that we have different generations in the workforce and we're dealing with a lot of different learning styles. And we need to keep that in mind. Death by PowerPoint is literally that, death by PowerPoint, and no one's really going to listen and they're not really learning. And we've tested this over and over again throughout the decades. We really need to look at a lot of hands-on component. That's never going to go away. When I heard someone earlier speak about, well, they don't have time and we do safety talks. That is absolutely just broke my heart. We have to make the time. We're talking about lives and people in the field, and we have to certainly make the time to do the hands-on or else people aren't going to learn. We need to make sure that we have effective tools. I really love the board. I was part of that, but I really love the board's training curriculum, and what they put together was very interactive, and it really spoke emotionally to the people that are learning. I would love to see the board to start providing that as a resource to many of us out here. I think that's a very effective, I know it's a very effective method, and a lot of work was put into that. So let's just keep that in mind. I'd like to see a little bit more organization and approval people that are providing this training, because there's really, not even with OSHA, no one's really certifying people, which I know you can't, but no one really knows the extent of the knowledge of the instructors that are out there. I think I would like to see in the future that we just start looking at that and making sure that the people that are training actually have the field experience and are knowledgeable. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any additional webinar comments, Rain?
There are no additional comments.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to touch on the hands-on portion of it. I think what Eric mentioned about the tailgating. I think tell something, but we call it tailgating. I think those are very powerful. 15 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever it is, just to actually be face-to-face communicating with someone and kind of sharing the events of the past week and what's going to happen on this week, so you can be prepared for it. Where I came from, one of the most effective ways to get a point across is like when we had motor vehicle accidents. If you were involved in that motor vehicle accident, you had to come up and explain exactly what you did and what you did wrong and how you were going to correct it. And you had to do it in front of your peers. And so I think, like Margie had mentioned, hands-on is probably, face-to-face is probably the most powerful message or most potential way of getting it across to others. So I'm totally for the hands-on and face-to-face type webinar. Find a way to get around it. Cheat, go backspace and go around it. I just finished some kind of ethics training. I won't say that. I know the attorney's in the room, so. But yeah, but eventually you had that time to communicate with one another. I think you take more pride in getting it through your brains.
Thank you. So while the discussion topic for the questions were broken out, very naturally, we just kind of touched on the rest of the questions during these discussions, which included which approaches or methods have been effective or ineffective. So we heard the discussion about considering learning styles and that hands-on is one of the most effective methods. And the third question was reasons that they may be effective or ineffective. So I would like to move on to the next topic, but before I do that, I wanted to offer the in-person and webinar attendees to provide any additional comments that they might have on the effectiveness or ineffectiveness of the training or possible reasons for that. Open it up to in-person first. That's okay if you don't have anything to add. Rain, are there any additional comments from the webinar attendees on either of those topics?
There are no hands up.
Okay.
There's one from Ian Veneris.
Great.
Hello. Yeah, just to touch on it again, I think meeting the people where they are, not having people kind of come in, has allowed us to deliver more training, more intimately, like more in person. And I think that's really been effective. And to say the same message to the field employees as well as their management and supervision with everybody in the same room, I think really helps set kind of an expectation. You know, it's not our place to tell excavators how to conduct their business, but we can, you know, talk about all the dangers of what we believe to be unsafe behavior. And it makes it really hard for people to disagree or to say, yeah, I know that's what you heard from them, but this is what I want you to do. So just kind of saying the same message in front of everybody together at the same time forces those, you know, conversations, and it kind of spreads more accountability, I feel like, throughout, you know, kind of all levels of our audience.
Great, thank you.
Next, we have a comment from David E. Woolley.
Great. David, you can unmute and provide your comment.
Okay, can you hear me now?
We can.
Okay, thank you. I would like to piggyback on to Marjorie Del Toro's comments about the actual training and the lack of training. If you read through the DIRT report, there's a high employee turnover, there's a lack of training, and then there's a shortage of staff. Part of the reason that there's such a high employee turnover in the mark and locate is due to low wages. You work very hard for the money on the 811 side, and you work a number of years, and there's really nowhere to go with that. And part of that is a lack of training and a lack of knowledge. There's a market coming forth that's the subsurface utility engineering, subsurface utility mapping, and that would provide us, it would piggyback into or give them a path forward, a ladder to a career on the mark and locate side, on the engineering side. And so where we're missing that is we're missing some of the training. I mentioned earlier, it was mentioned earlier about the apprenticeship programs, which do really well under the laborers safety training. And they do a good job of that training, but they don't actually train on the mark and locate side, even though it's in their DIR scope. And I think it should be they should break that out as a separate, I don't know which trade unit it'll fall under, but a separate category in the DIR. As opposed to like a labor group 4. And I think there's some training that could go into that is more into the engineering side. Anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Rain, are there any additional webinar comments?
Out of the staff.
Thank you. There's no additional comments in person either, then we'll move on to our next topic. Our next topic of discussion relates to access to excavation safety training. We will ask 2 questions to facilitate the evaluation of challenges and obstacles associated with access. The first question for this topic is, are there specific challenges or obstacles that you face in obtaining access to excavation safety training? We will open it to in-person comments first, followed by webinar comments. As a reminder, please provide your name and organization. Those attending the webinar, as a reminder, you can press the raise hand button or dial *5 to be placed into the queue and provide your comment when your name is called. Are there any in-person comments at this time? No challenges for obtaining access? Okay. Ray, are there any webinar comments at this time?
There are no webinar comments at this time.
Okay. So do we feel like the training is available and accessible when it's needed? Yeah.
I think a lot of it comes down to, for the excavators, it's company policy that's trained on, so there's no problem getting it because it's already built into their business. I don't see a whole lot out there for homeowners except for in small businesses that don't know, like the one we were talking about at the beginning of the process, that don't call USA. There's not a lot out there that I've seen to help them. But from our perspective as an excavator, the training material is pretty easy to get to, especially from your plan requirements.
How do we get in touch with those smaller contractors? I mean, the 3 to 5.
Yeah, well, that's the tough part there.
Anyway, it's Eric Metzger. We kind of touched on a lot of these answers in the last question as far as, methods and approaches, but to Marshall's point there and then Josh's is, especially when you look at small contractors, how many contractors are out there still working without licenses? That's one of the first challenges you run into. But then the ones that are licensed, is that an approach that we could partner with CSLB more effectively to develop, whether it be online training or some approaches where they could effectively and affordably be able to provide more training to that field? And then maybe one of the things that we do at Charge, because we have grown into a good medium to large size company, is mentoring programs, where we're providing that mentorship to smaller, newer excavators that are coming up. So.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. Maybe there's they can create some kind of script that they can go to the website and download it and be able to share with their employees. I think that's a good suggestion.
Yeah, I can tell you from my personal experience, when I first got my contractor's license many years ago, I was hungry for information, not just on the law that I had to follow, but, approaches that I could do to be more effective in my operations. And the thing I've learned over the years I've been in this industry, it's more effective to train and to avoid the impact of a strike than it is to have the strike. So. Sure. Yes, thank you.
If I may, Jessica, Todd Bloomstein, Southern California Contractors Association, and no offense to anyone here from the CSLB, but, as someone who's worked for a while on the commercial side, the CSLB is set up as the consumer protection agency, primarily to support and to protect the homeowner. And, again, you just have to look at, Eric's example of, a small contractor getting a license compared to an extraordinarily large company. I'm going to just say Tiger because they're familiar to Northern Californians, with a whole ton of employees, right? But just one license. And they're all over the place, all across the state. So there's a real struggle in, I think, permeating down from the CSLB down and getting to the people that are in the field, right? And so the way I perceive this question, I mean, the access to safety training for me goes back to just recognition of the 811 system in the first place. And that should be the primary reason. And then once, as again, Eric indicated, he was hungry for knowledge. He was hungry because he learned about the system and then he wanted to find education about it. I think that's the primary step, is making sure people are aware of 811 in the first place. And what is that universe of people that aren't? Okay, so it's homeowners and it's going to be smaller contractors, right? So how do you gain that awareness? You know, I don't know, are there, for homeowners that pull permits from cities and counties, is there a disclosure that they have to contact 811? I've heard about that sometime in the past. I think some do, some don't.
It depends.
It depends if there's a permit. So that's something else to look at to kind of trigger that idea. Wow, I need to educate myself about what this process is. So that's just, you know, one idea on the permitting side as well to help identify. Yeah, I would be reluctant because the CSLB is not a training facility. It's not like, it's not a training center, right? It's a licensing center and it's primarily designed to protect homeowners for home improvement projects.
That's where that partnership comes into play between the safe excavation approach and the contractor support, because that's your pool.
Right.
And one of the things I was going to point out is, when you look at the small guy, they're living on a phone. This is their means of operation. It's probably the highest tech that most of those guys will carry, right? And they're not going to have as much savvy when it comes to utilizing webinar technologies and those things. So, and I think Josh pointed out, it's that hands-on approach, getting people to be proactive in the field. And like I said, I don't know what the answer is, but if there was a partnership where we could go out and target those smaller to medium-sized contractors in a physical sense, there'd be probably more success.
Of course, the struggle there is there's 280,000 registered licensed contractors in the state. You're talking about an extraordinarily large pool that's very, very diverse in not only their size, but the scope of the work that they do.
Yeah, I have a question. Margie, I don't know if you're still on the line, but are there opportunities, since we have this weight with smaller businesses or contractors? Is there an avenue out there where training companies that do things like that will kind of communicate, or is there a door open for that? And how do they communicate to get these contacts? Is it a combination with the CSLB? You know, what do you suggest?
Marjorie?
Okay, I was just given privilege. So I think that's something that we've been talking about for many years, even throughout my tenure, is I believe, to me, I believe CSLB is one of the main routes we need to go to. We need to be able to have discussions with them to be able to reach these smaller contractors. They want their license, their focus, and to be able to provide some sort of training. And I've personally reached out to CSLB to try to see if we can make a little bit of change or addition to their curriculum. And it's just a really tough thing to break. So I would love for the board to continue those discussions. I know we invited them to a large meeting a couple of years back. I would love to see that continue until we do make some movement. One of the key things that I've seen also when we talked about homeowners is we all have to get permits, right? Before we do, the ones that do get permits. It'd be great for part of that, getting a permit and getting permission to get a permit, is that the cities and local municipalities, they engaged in making sure that the homeowners are trained, whether it's a video, whether, you know, it'd be great to be able to provide those. Those are the only couple things that I've seen that we could really reach out. Being able to, again, through media, provide some training to homeowners and just awareness. But that's the only things that I see, Marshall, that could possibly work. We need to go to where they have to, almost mandated to sit in these classes and learn a little bit more about not just locating, but, you know, trend shoring.
Thanks, Margie. I was mentioning, because Eric brought it up, that with the CSLB, and when you got a contractor that works basically off his phone, they give him an opportunity to be able to have an avenue to contact somebody to help him out. And I didn't know if there were any companies out there that's trying to training that is available to the smaller contractors.
There really isn't.
outside.
Yeah, most of the safety companies and training companies, but that's a great idea, Marshall.
Thanks, Margie.
Wayne, are there any comments from the webinar at this time?
Yes, next up we have Alejandro Garcia.
Great. Alejandro, you can unmute yourself and provide your comment.
Thank you very much. Well, regarding the things that you've been mentioning before, I have two things to share with you. As I do see damages through the whole country, and mainly like these from coast to coast, right? In the Florida, we have some of the things that happen there, like contractors making homeowners sign these private contracts where liability on damages for third parties damages are homeowners' responsibility. I don't know, to be honest, for sure. For me, California is a brand new market on my day-to-day basis. Are these contracts also a common use here in California? Because the question comes because of these. In these other states, it's happening that as these little or small contractors, and we're going to put this as small under quotes because sometimes they're not that small, by making this a homeowner sign these private contracts in which they assume any responsibility for damaging others' properties through the process. Okay, I believe there's like a misunderstanding in these contracts and the real negligence responsibility. But the main thing here is this is making, or I believe this is the excuse for the contractors not to be careful because they're not going to be held liable. All right. So this is one of the things, okay, that I wish to share with you because I believe in the legal part also is really important, like to be clear in order to put everything on its place and making these private contracts and I don't know, keep an eye on them, all right? And on the other hand, when you were talking about these training or on the contractor side, on the crew side, I've developed a very, I believe, useful but simple kind of a protocol that I share sometimes with the contractors I have contact with, as trying to help in the digging process, like these safety digging process. Not because of only AT&T's utilities, but as you say, there are lots of that can be really more risky. Okay, no one's gonna die for cutting a phone line, right? But it's not happening the same if you are talking about electricity or gas, right? But in these cases, I believe that having some sort of easy to work with step by step or protocol or recommendations for all these crew members to follow, but not only the main contractors, the ones that are actually holding these shovel are the ones that need to know how to do their job, how to avoid damage, how these safety guidance to be applied in order to keep everybody safe. At the end of it, not everybody, but most of them or many of them are from different countries, and most of them does not have underground utilities as well. So I believe it's important for them also to know how this works, right? Not only to just be contracted. I don't know how to expose this part of it because I don't want to sound bad, All right, I don't want to sound inappropriate. That's not the idea. But I believe it's important to share and to, as you say, educate everybody in the differences. All right, so we all can be living in a safety place, right? Thank you.
You had a response?
Yeah, one quick thing just to add, Colin Miotti from USA North 811, the Inland Center for Northern California and Central California. Unfortunately, we do, just to add on to what Alejandra said, we do see that from time to time where a homeowner will call us and say that, hey, I have this contractor that is forcing me to create the ticket. You know, when they do call us, we tell them we need the person that is digging to create the ticket, and that's what's required by law. So if it's being subbed out, you know, our people working the phones kind of tell them, you know, walk them through the process of, we can't create it on their behalf. It needs to be the person that's digging, because all the communication from the operators goes to them so they can know what's there, what, you know, how to proceed, right? What scares me is I don't know how often this is happening when they're not getting to us. So it may be more common than we know, but I'd say a call gets to our department, the education department, you know, maybe once a month with that situation. But like I said, that could be the tip of the iceberg. There might be more of these smaller contractors that are passing on the liability to the homeowner and just saying, hey, you have to create the ticket and assume all damages, you know, all liability if the damage happens, which is very unfortunate.
Well, you don't know either if it's happening on your web either,
Correct.
right? Okay. It happened.
It happens all the time.
All the time. We regularly see it out in the field.
Those are like the do-it-your-home pool builders, right? That they're just the homeowners acting as the general essentially and subbing out all the different work for the build set.
I think it's just a small job, and these contractors have these contract that basically says, and I've seen, actually, to try to find it, one of them.
Yeah.
They're not large, complicated.
Yeah, they're the small,
It's small.
projects.
Gotcha.
I typically see it for a stump grinding contractor near phone pedestals, near anywhere that's gonna be a pain.
Right.
And they just push it off on the homeowner.
Yeah.
Tell them to call it in and walk away.
Yeah.
My name's Matt, I'm a cable locator with SMUD. As far as any of this training, I think you could really take it back to the construction programs in schools. You could take it back, I mean, seniors and juniors, they have an idea if they're gonna go to college, if they're gonna get into the trade one way or another. There's ROP programs, there's construction management programs, and I think a lot of this could start there. Whether it just be a bug in the ear. I mean, most of us didn't just senior year decide to do something else, right? You had an idea. I think a good place to start would be high schools. When I was in high school, I went through ACE mentor program, and they took you all over the state for all these different aspects of the architect side, the underground side. And personally, I think that would be a good place to start for any of this training, the 811 training, the safety training, the excavation. That's a good place to lay out the foundation, a good roadmap to start.
Thank you. Do we have some additional comments from our webinar attendees, Ryan?
We have a comment from David E. Woolley.
Great. David, you can unmute, provide your comment now.
Good morning again. The legislative process and the regulatory process is a years-long process, and we face a lot of headwinds when we try to add additional regulations or legislative proposals. And so what I would recommend to the board is to basically write out your wish list of the things that if it could only be this way. And then it's just a matter of time until we have an event. I'll give an example. A lot of the regulations that we work under now were put in place after the San Bruno pipeline, and Senator Hill pushed this through. And so if you have everything ready to go, when the event happens, then everybody's ready to, we have to do something is the general sense of things. And it'll get through much quicker with less resistance, because nobody wants to be the person that says they stopped in our current world forest fire prevention. Nobody wants to be the one person responsible for the fire hydrants. So what I would recommend to the Underground Safety Board is put this all down, let the individual interest say they don't support it, shelve it, and when we have an event, then bring this up because it'll go through quickly. And as a preparatory, I would do that. I would recommend to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional webinar comments?
There are no additional comments this time.
Thank you.
Just have one quick question for the group to discuss. Mentioned CSLB is one for, not really for training, but more so for, the actual license. And in that process, is there a partnership with like Cal OSHA? Would that be a better avenue?
Yes,
First, okay.
much better. I mean, just blatantly, the CSLB is a board underneath the Department of Consumer Affairs. It's with nurses and architects, the idea of protecting the owners. DIR would be far more appropriate because they look at standards.
Thank you, everyone. So the second question for this topic, I feel, has been addressed through this discussion already, which some of the possible reasons for these challenges or obstacles. So I am going to move on to the next topic unless anybody had any additional comments to add specifically for that second question. Give it a moment for anybody on the webinar to raise their hand if they had additional comments to add to that. Anyone raise their hand, Rain?
No hand raised this time.
Great, thank you. We're going to move on to our next topic of discussion. So this relates to coordinating best practices between stakeholders. So there are two questions provided here that will help evaluate the resources and tools and their effectiveness. So the first question for this topic is, what additional resources or tools would enhance the effectiveness of implementing best practices in excavation safety training? And the second question for this discussion is how can those best practices be consistently coordinated between stakeholders? So we're going to open this discussion to in-person comments, followed by webinar comments. Everybody knows how this works by now. If you're on the webinar, you can raise your hand, or you can dial *5 to be placed in the queue and provide your comment when your name is called. So I'll invite our in-person participants to provide comment first. We will move to the webinar comments since the room is quiet. Rain?
Yes, we have Alejandro Garcia.
Great.
Thank
Alejandro,
you.
you can
Again. Alrighty. So what I was thinking that could work in this case is, you know that insurance companies work like very close with the contractors in order to have them this damages insurance, right? So why not ask for their collaboration in this process by definitely having people educated and well-trained is going to reduce significantly the risk of damages. That definitely is going to reduce their reimbursement. So I believe this is a key part that we can try to use in order to maybe attach, motivate the training at even providing like these resources by maybe enhancing the insurance prices by sending at least one of these crew members to take these workshops or to have these effective training, right? I believe this could be a very nice excuse to participate. Okay, I believe contractors will love to participate if there is some kind of incentive in the middle. At the end, it's gonna benefit us all. That's what I believe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just if I may, Todd Bloomstein, Southern California Contractors Association. I appreciate AT&T's comments here, but I would say, you know, insurance incentives or increasing insurance for those that strike underground utilities is already baked into the process.
Yeah.
On the public works side, and even the private works side, contractors are required to be bonded. Now, I'm not talking about the $15,000, $12,500 CSLB bond that's just a licensing bond. I'm talking about an actual insurance policy that's valued at the total amount of the public works contract in order for a contractor to simply bid on the project. In order to qualify for that performance bond, a contractor has to show usually 10 to 20% of assets in order to qualify for a bond, right? If a contractor has multiple claims on its business, the surety company is going to see that and they're going to jack up the price of their bonds. As a matter of fact, if there's so many claims, there's a process involved in the public works side where contractors have to pre-qualify to even bid on a job. And one of those pre-qualification requirements is, have you any claims against your company for damages? All of this, and while I appreciate AT&T's comments, all of these issues are already baked in to the overall construction process right now. I hope that's helpful for understanding.
Especially when you're looking at me.
Why is that? Well, you're retired. Marcia, when you retired.
One additional comment or resource I was thinking about is Common Ground Lines Damage Prevention Institute. Where, if you're a member CJ, that is still a voluntary approach to join, but they're starting to build a set of tools and training material that would be, I think, available or should be available to the small and medium sized contractors. Well, so that could be a resource.
Well, 811 puts out their excavation handbook with the 4216 on one side, and it is, I think it's very good. So if that was something that could be distributed in a more mainstream way.
Yeah, just to add to that, so essentially, we're working through that process right now. We've always had a law book and best practices in there. We're about 100 pages though. So, and 60 of it is the California Government Code 4216, which is great for people like us, policymakers, or people that are directors of safety that can drive change. But we're experimenting with a different approach. We're not taking away the manuals, but we're going to do more of like a field guide, something that's more relatable to somebody that's in the field, working, hands-on. With the 60 pages of California Government Code 4216, it's tough to point somewhere and break it down. We're not lawyers. They're not lawyers. So we're trying to make it a little bit easier to digest in this field guide concept. So hopefully we're going to have that out here in probably about a month.
Are there any webinar comments at this time, Rain?
Yes, we have a comment from Ian Veneris.
Hello, Young PG&E. I really like the case studies that were produced by the board for their education course, the YouTube videos that kind of break down the incidents and kind of create like a human element, especially considering the tragedies that they covered. I found to be really impactful. And I don't think we've seen too many new case studies, but that would be, if we could get more of that, I think that would be a great resource. It takes more than a case study to constitute training, I think, but anchoring it in real life events is a huge bonus to really drive home the impact of what we're talking about.
Great, thank you. Rain, are there any additional webinar comments at this time?
Yes, we have another comment from Michael Worcester.
Michael, you can unmute and provide your comment.
Thank you. Wanted again with the CGA, but I would more specifically talk about California Regional because we do try to coordinate between our stakeholders, with our regulators and everybody. I think that's really important. It's a resource that's already here. And I like to see us hook up more with some training or outfits, trade schools, union training halls, non-union training halls. There's a lot of them out there, but it's not very coordinated. We already have the platform. So for those on the call and everything, it's if you haven't taken a look at it, jump on the web and see how we pull things together. Rather than trying to build another one, it's already the infrastructure for the stakeholders is there. We just got to utilize it more and focus on educating, outreach and stuff for excavating and training only, because there's so much. It just kind of coming from all directions of call centers and everywhere else. It'd be nice if we could kind of coordinate something all together starting maybe this year, and we'd be willing to do that.
I totally agree. I think the collaboration, because you have the one call centers, you have Carga, you have the Safe Board, and then you have the other utilities that do their own safety presentations. Some collaboration where we can all come together and be one voice per se. So
Maybe we can just have an event, just standalone event for just bringing training stakeholders themselves together, just to kind of a networking thing that we can all sit down and figure out how to do this. So I'll bring this back to our committee and work on it this year.
Thank you.
So where do you suggest that? Is that an annual event or quarterly event or semi-annual, or where we all come together, or what are you saying on this, Michael?
Wait, is Michael unmuted?
Thank you. I would think at least initially annual, just to see who's willing to jump aboard. Of course, the call centers and this board, we're already members of Carga, but I would like to just brainstorm for the first time and figure out who we can reach out to again. Trade schools, union trade schools, non-union trade schools, and then go from there. I would say just start with one for this year and see where we can go from there.
So Colin, what's your perspective on that?
I really, we're expanding our children's outreach. I think we need to plant the seeds somewhere, and then I would love for us to get into trades. I think Carga would be a great avenue to try to work on a project like that because it is complex.
But in regards to collaboration with the different groups?
Yes, that's right. Thanks for my brain blank for a second, but with that, I think it's a great idea. I also believe each county or each region has different issues. So I think it would be good to have that on kind of a localized level. Say, Sacramento, the greater Sacramento County area, contiguous counties, whatever's around, maybe some sort of roundtable of all the stakeholders. Maybe there's a fiber project coming through. And that's going to be different than what's going on down in LA or down in the Central Valley. So I think it needs to be a little bit more localized, get all the stakeholders to see what they're facing in that county versus, I think both approaches essentially need to happen. That makes sense.
So we've heard about a couple of resources or tools, case studies, a roundtable or stakeholder event, and some pamphlets. Are there any other resources or tools that maybe have worked well in the past or that are currently being underutilized that anybody would like to add any additional comments on?
This is Michael again. I'm still unmuted, I believe. USIC, as a representative of USIC this time, not Carga, we've run trade schools throughout the country focused on located and excavation safety, and our plan is to operate one here in California as well. So I think we can kind of tie that into the whole idea of bringing together a central spot. Not that that needs to be the central spot, but I think it's a good start to have a trade school focused on cable locating itself. Might be the first of its kind here. And that's something that's in the works right now. We're going to focus very much on younger folks coming right out of high school, stuff like that. I think it's one of our greatest resources.
Great, thank you. Right, are there additional hands raised at this time on the webinar?
There are no additional hands at this time.
Any additional comments from the room before we move on? Okay, great. So our last topic of discussion relates to areas of improvement in excavation safety training. So we have one question to help evaluate recent safety incidents and learnings. What recent incidents or near misses have highlighted areas for improvement in excavation safety training, and what can we learn from them? We'll begin with in-person comments, followed by webinar comments. If you are on the webinar, you can raise your hand using the raise hand button or dial *5 to be placed in the queue. When your name is called, you can provide your comment. As a reminder, please provide your name and organization before your comment. At this time, are there any comments from our in-person participants? Yeah.
Josh Smith, charge. I'd say what's worked best, especially for us, is just being transparent from all of the excavators and operators together. I know the SoCal incidents that have been happening down south have made a big impact even with us up here. PG&E has got together with SoCal Gas and been working on excavation safety, equipment operator safety, any type of thing that goes on in the industry. Just being transparent and getting it out across the state has helped for sure. Not keeping your incidents to yourself and siloed, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah.
Eric Metzger. Along with that, one of the things that we've always done that's been a part of our culture is that safety process, safety procedures, as we all know, are usually learned in a lot of cost and a lot of time and injury. So there's no copyright on anything that we come up with as solutions. And, you know, we do a lot of root cause analysis and we openly share that. You know, we share that with our customers and our competitors. And we've developed a more openness between us and other large scale operators or excavators and sharing that root cause analysis. Because everybody knows when you've had a major strike or incident, there's no hiding. So let's make sure the lessons we learn are lessons that hopefully somebody else doesn't have to learn. So sharing that information openly is important.
Todd Boomstein, Southern California Contractors Association. Once again, SCCA started a subcommittee called the Pipeline and Underground Group, obviously short name, and we've been working internally, looking at some of the products that the Underground Safety Board has sent out, some of the probable PNOV, probable notice of violation. We've looked at those, and through that discussion, we've had internally members have come out and said, hey, look, you know, here's a situation that they had at the Port of Long Beach, which is notorious for abandoned lines and underground lines that are very shallow. And we had one contractor who showed us fiber optic line that was moving through at a certain depth, and then, you know, without marking it, went up just below the surface and went back down, and they struck that. And yeah, just taking that incident and, you know, trying to extrapolate what's the lesson learned. The lesson learned is depth, of course. You never know how deep things are, but there's got to be some wiggle room. That even when things are marked, there has to be some discretion used. That, you know, we think it's there. we're not certain it's there, but we think it's there. And that was something that came up, which really leads for the idea of being extra cautious when you're taking up the ground, even when things are works. Thanks, Justin.
Any additional comments in the room about any incidents that you may have been involved in or heard about that maybe identified a gap in training that we can discuss? Okay, yeah.
One thing that calling me out from USA North 811, the idea of case studies that are generated from the USB, I love that because it's difficult. You know, Eric mentioned at Charge UPC, they're open to share, but not everybody else is, from, you know, just impacts the optics of their company, whether it's operator or an excavator, which so it can impact business. But if it, you know, if they came from the USP, it is kind of, I mean, we're able to point to, at least it'd be easy for us to share those. We don't really like pointing out excavators did this wrong or, you know, our operators, anything like that. So I just like the idea of those case studies. And, you know, I thought I'm gonna follow up with Eric because I would love to get those root cause analysis, try to make those in examples and distribute those out to excavators. So yeah.
Thank you. Rain, do we have any hands raised on our webinar at this time?
There are no hands raised at this time.
Okay.
I take that back. We do have a hand raised by Nathan Cathcart.
Great. Nathan, you can unmute and provide your comment.
Nathan Cathcart with the City of Los Angeles Bureau of Contract Administration Emergency Sewer Response Program. I would just like to reiterate what Todd indicated from the Southern California Contractors Association. The failure of utilities failure is such a harsh word. Almost all of my near misses associated with work in the public right of way are usually related to abandoned infrastructure that utilities do not claim ownership, and it causes false positives in the sense that we feel that we have located the existing marked utility. But, you know, based on experience, we continue to pothole and it slows the process down and it adds a cost to the public works contractor because they're forced to never take anything at first glance. And so I just feel like if, obviously I'm new to this meeting, but as somebody who sees excavations every day, multiple locations, the abandoned line situation is a strong negative impacting the ability for the contractors to perform their work. Thank you.
Thank you. Rain, are there any additional hands raised on the webinar?
There are no additional hands this time.
Thank you. Any additional comments in the room?
Can I touch on the abandoned?
Definitely.
As a locator, you see this every day. There's always abandoned, there always will be, and I don't think anybody who thinks that it's gonna get better is not really looking into the future. Everything gets replaced, right? Gas, water, can't dig it all back out. You're gonna run out of room. Eventually, stuff's gonna be 20 feet deep because that's the only window they have bored in. And I think that is a topic for a different conversation because that's something that's gonna have to be worked through the next 30, 40, 50, 60 years. Put a water line in, they take the old one out, but a gas line doesn't get taken out, power line doesn't get taken out. That window is still gonna be occupied forever. I don't think that he's right. You can't go on the assumption of what you found always is the first thing is the right thing, but I think that's a total different conversation for down the road. That's something that's not gonna change. I think it's only gonna get worse. The boring every day, there's new contractors, everybody's boring, everybody's trenching it. It's only gonna get worse.
And so can I follow up on this and ask, do we think that then there's a lack of training on abandoned lines that could be done to enhance safety? Oh, so this, all right, we're doing great.
Can I
Okay.
just ask a clarifying
Yeah.
question before we move on? When we're saying abandoned lines, because as of 2017, abandoned lines have to be located and marked with A in a circle. And I know that there's unclaimed lines that were just left in the ground and an operator doesn't have ownership or doesn't maintain them, and an excavator is that what we're talking about, is the unclaimed line?
Well, I mean, on our aspect, the abandoned, we replace wire that's 60, 70 years old, that's been buried forever, right? We replace that on a daily basis. As far as unclaimed, I know you're supposed to mark with an A, right? But as a locator aspect, I don't know where that is.
Yeah.
It could be, there could be a map where it shows it on the east side of the road, but it was on the west side, but it's 70 years old, and when it went to GIS, it didn't. And it's hard for me to walk up and say, my new stuff's right here, I can mark this and I'm confident in this, but I have old stuff over there. There's stuff under houses. It could go 2 feet back a walk and it's under a house.
That's claimed. Those are claimed. So the operator knows where that's at. We're just not using it. It's not operational.
Yes.
Or, so we're using it.
Well, I have a rough idea of where it is, right? Because I have no way to hook onto it. I have no way to locate it. Once it's deactivated, it's gone.
Yeah, her point is, does the operator know that it's a line that exists there? We're just
Yeah,
not
at one
using it?
point, yeah.
Or is it
Sometimes.
the operator disappeared, they're gone, and nobody knows
Yeah.
what or
Something that's phased out, yeah.
It's basically trash in the ground.
I think there will get to the point where, you're talking about an abandoned line that is so old that it is now even removed from our maps as abandoned.
Well, and I don't care if you call it an abandoned line or an unclaimed line.
Yeah.
From a field perspective, it's an abandoned line. There's no clarity to me. And what I've seen over and over and over again is when we identify something that's quote unquote unmarked, nobody will take ownership. I mean, you can physically see that it's a steel line, so it's either gas or water, right? Or, it's a cable, right? But nobody will take ownership. When they've replaced that circuit or that system, I've seen over and over again where the supposed facility owner just discounts it. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. So as an excavator, what we've done for ourselves, and we've shared this at the Targa gas strike event, multiple times, other places. We tell our guys that if there's no size or type on the mark, you will dig down and verify to your depth of bore and or trench before you, and clear the tolerance of 2 feet either side, so that no matter what, we will never get a bill for striking someone. It's a mismark to cover our butt. There, you will never have an apple dig if you follow that.
Yeah. And that's what we tell them.
And we've run into where we've been on a site, we potholed, right? We found a 2-inch gas line. Right? And then we started to drill or excavate, and sure enough, right below that 28 inches or 18 inches is actually a PL gas line.
Steel and plastic.
It went from steel to plastic, but the plans never showed that, and or the locates didn't identify that.
These are all scenarios, the safety training that we need to get out there.
Yeah.
Just like, the issue with the cable or the going up and
Safety
down.
training, and I think the other piece of it is access. I mean, I wrote down that LA's got a system online for me to be able to access to view their sewer and storm.
It's great.
Oh my God, that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Now, if I could get, and I'm so tired of hearing about cybersecurity or, homeland security about knowing where lines are. If I want to know where your gas line is, I don't need USA North or any other system. I can find it. But from an operator and a safety perspective, the value of me as a contractor or any contractor being able to access SMUD system of record to be able to know where their lines are to help validate that, or PG&E's or whoever's could also help mitigate a lot of these issues that we run into. Because my guys are trained, and we train them to look for indicators, whether it be a standpipe or a vent line, or for those obvious things. But if I was able to assist the quality like SMUD's locators are doing out there, but I had that same map, and if they were running and they missed something, or I have a question, now we're talking from the same language. I'm not guessing.
We're restricted by NERC and FERC standards about what we can provide
Oh, I know.
to you.
I know.
Because it has been a conversation of, okay, you're replacing gas in this subdivision. I'll give you the plans for this subdivision. I won't give you an inch outside either way, but NERC and FERC says no.
No, I, that's what I'm saying.
Trust me, it would be easier for us too.
Yeah, we would
Because
love
then
to.
you would call and we'd, like you
And
said,
that's
we'd have the
the
same
thing from
idea.
everybody.
Yeah. Ideally,
Yeah, that's a big issue.
yeah.
And so, with Homeland Security, everybody can fall under that parameter. But it's like Todd was mentioning, every year I used to get a call where there's a cable sitting in the desert. And it'll come up because the wind blew it open, blew the sand, and we had to go back and bury it. So these type of stories and scenarios people need to know about. You could run into this kind of incident, or you can be aware of it, look for it. And part of the training packages kind of give folks to think about what Eric is saying. Hey, you have to check everything. You have to cross your eyes and dot your I's and cross your T's. So that's what we want to make sure within our training that we make them aware of, that these things can happen and be out there.
And while it's, what we're kind of talking about isn't quite about training, but I think in a sense it is, and maybe it's, if I have a partnership with a company, if I'm one of SMUD's contractors or PG&E's contractors, being able to develop a safe area where I would have access to that alone could, mitigate a lot of these, overlaps or misses that we have, I think it would really enhance the ability to locate effectively and to communicate with the locators from us as a contractor.
I think that develops over time on a company to company district basis. No?
I will say if it's a project for us, you have access to it.
Right.
To a point, right?
And
If it's a project for PG&E, you're not gonna have access to my stuff.
And that's the struggle, right? Because there's different.
It is.
There's different types of excavators. There's the underground excavators that are installing utilities, right? And they're gonna interact with other companies' utilities. And then there were that called third-party excavators. They're just doing a street project, right? A public works project where they're not installing any utilities at all, but they're still engaging with utility companies as well. So, yet more complexity, of course, on the term excavator.
I will say that I do think that there is, like you're talking about the A with the circle. I would be wary that everybody even knows what that means at this point. I don't actually use it as a locator very much because I don't know that the contractors know. So I do think that there's an opportunity just for a lot of the abbreviations that are used, that are laid out in the law, to be out there a little cheat, a little guide, something like that, so that we can, as locators, start using that more effectively. I literally write like A, B, A, and D period, just so that they understand what that is. Yeah.
Out there since 2017.
Yeah, and there's.
They do it one call center, does
I'll
the training.
put PLA and they'll still ask me what PLA means.
And to that point, the other piece of that is locators' consistency from place to place and from utility to utility is phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean, we work with, look, I would not want the job. I'll be flat out about that. Those guys work their butts off every day trying to keep up the number of tickets they have. But the information they give is vital. And the more information we get helps us set us up for success. We've run into it, especially like with electric, where we'll get red marks. You see red, that's and they've cleared the ticket. But what we find out is they've cleared secondary. But the locators aren't qualified to do what they call live face openings to hook up and locate the primary. But we have the red, we start doing our work, and then we dig into a 12 kV line.
Yeah.
And that's happened numerous times. And that's, if we had the mark out there that said, SL, right, or 12 kV. Now we know that we've got that, and there's areas that we see that, but it's not consistent throughout the state or each utility.
Well, then, like in our particular case in Sacramento County, we don't own all of the electric, right? So the county owns it, the cities will own the street lights, the traffic signals, the things like that. So there's a lot of, unfortunately, there's a lot of time wasted for the contractors going, who does this belong to?
You can normally tell who's, if it's a SMUD line.
Yeah.
Well, that goes back to the annual safety, the committee meeting, right? Between the stakeholders. I don't think it's a bad idea because there are a lot of different people, especially in California, who do mark electric. We don't own commercial secondary. We don't transformer to a building. We don't own it. We don't mark it. We don't map it. It's not ours. We get that call every day. This isn't mine. This isn't mine. This isn't mine. But we don't own it.
You go on.
Because PG&E does. PG&E does, they do mark to their meter if it's electric or gas, if it's commercial or residential. We don't. Apartment complexes, some 40 years ago, a lot of them opted to own it themselves and not rely on SMUD or whoever it was to maintain their power. But now that's their problem. Now that USA is a big thing, it's their problem and they want to push it back. But
There's lots of hazards.
Oh, yeah.
You know, Caltrans, as an example, you put a SMUD box on adjacent to the right of way.
Yeah.
The lines coming from the box to the Caltrans facility, those don't get marked.
Yeah.
Because it's Caltrans.
because we only mark to the service point, they don't,
Whereas those are more.
and they don't mark.
Exactly. So lots of, and for what it's worth, as professionally, I've tried to get Caltrans to participate through legislation and it does. Multiple times it does. So
One thing that does validate is that face-to-face interaction is the best way of doing things and kind of uncover a lot of opportunities. So,
I do want to give our webinar attendees, we had a few hands raised, so I want to give them a chance to participate as well. So, Ryan, can you unmute the first commenter, please?
Yes, first commenter is going to be Francisco Flores.
Great. Francisco, you can provide your comment now. We don't hear you yet.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. I was having trouble with that. I just wanted to share something regarding near miss. Just because in the last, I would say 2.5 years, we've had 3 incidents where homeowners are doing, say, home improvements, and they pull permits to do their work, but the city's building and safety departments do not have a call that they should call 811 before they start digging. And they've hit our line 3 times. Luckily, it wasn't major damage. It was just to the outside, but it was a 52-inch water line. And so that was just one of the things, that maybe like that's something to talk about or think about for future, getting some of these cities to make it a requirement to include that in their permits. And by the way, I'm with the Metropolitan Water District. Sorry about that.
May I respond?
Yeah.
Because legislation last year and the year before, we included water lines, gravity, sewer lines, as well as non-pressurized water lines. And the sewer districts and the water districts opposed that bill. And for, as the city of Los Angeles, I had no idea they post that. You can find that, but they opposed the bill saying it would cost a lot of money to locate and mark their facilities. I was astonished, frankly, that one of the advocates of the association told me it was no big deal when the contractors hit their lines because they just send a $50,000, $80,000 bill to the contractor and it gets fixed. I was absolutely floored, but that is some of the attitude that is out there. And I'm really trying not to be aggressive, but that's just the way it is. That's how business is handled by some operators, and it's very, very frustrating. I mean, could you imagine being the worker down 15 feet in a trench, right? And you strike a line and it starts to flood. I mean, there's a perspective of protect our infrastructure and our property. I look at this as protect our workers who are out there that are digging in these trenches and pouring across large areas.
Thank you for that discussion. Brain, do we have additional comments from the webinar?
Yes, our next comment is from Alejandra Garcia.
Great. Alejandra, you know how this works by now?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Again, well, I just have a couple of things to add or to make questions here, to be honest, more likely to the locators, the specialists. When we're talking about these abandoned lines, because this is like my line of business, right? And I need like to understand why this is happening, these false positives are happening. So my question here, or some of my questions here are, Can you please explain what is the typically happening to abandoned lines? Are these lines usually disconnected only from the household, or they're being disconnected maybe from the main line or the pedestal? Is this false positive linked to these? Maybe these lines are still connected to the main service, and that is why this is happening. And if they were being completely disconnected, will that fix the problem? That would be one of the questions, right? Like to completely understand this location process on these phone and fiber lines that are my main concern, also maybe electricity, but on how these are located and how these false positives can be prevented from not to the past, not from what has already been done, but from here on. And on the other side, and as a result of these workshop, what I'm seeing here is like here it's evident like a challenge, like a big challenge to improve all these underground activities, all right, for everybody, from adding to the school curriculum, maybe this education of the 811 call before you dig need, to the making all like a big front on how to work much better together. At the end of it, this is going to be improving for everybody, and evidently bring legislation, bring this, as I understand, actually right now the insurance companies might be not the best friend, but what I believe is if we involve the best practices, in certain point, it has to improve itself, all right? This happens just like if you are like involved in a traffic jams or in traffic accidents every time, like 3 or 4 or 5 a year, your insurance company is either not going to cover you anymore on your car, or it's going to be very expensive. So this is more likely what's happening with the contractors and their insurance policies on these third property damages and so on. Now, so these are these two things, right? We need to implement new best practices that will show improvement maybe from here on in some time, maybe not immediate, but will definitely do. And well, that's pretty much it. If someone on the locators can answer my questions, that would be awesome. Thank you.
I'm not a locator, but the issue with abandoned lines or a vacant line or unclaimed line is that the contractor runs into it and he doesn't know if it's live or not. And it causes delays, causes safety concerns, and they're frustrated, very frustrated, because now after all this time is spent, maybe a week dealing with it, they couldn't do any work. Now it cost them money and time for the project. And so the issue is in California is that, you know, if you know that it's abandoned, you mark it with an A. And if you know or aware about anything underground that they may run into, you let them know, communicate. And I think that's what we need to do a better job as communicating. Sometimes our maps don't indicate that anymore. They used to, but now they're supposed to moving forward. But from a safety concern, and I want to make sure we stay on safety and training, is that how do we make them aware what to look for when there's a possible safety concern and it relates to abandoned facilities or unclaimed facilities. But there is a law in place that requires that the utility indicate it, mark it, and communicate with the excavator. And there's laws that says the excavator, if he runs into it, you stop. And so we got to do a better job of helping one another communicate. So hopefully that answers your question.
Shane, do we have any additional hands raised on our webinar?
We do.
Great.
Next comment is from Nathan Cathcart.
Nathan, can you unmute and provide your comment?
Yes. Typical response to a unabandoned or unclaimed is if you remove it, in other words, you have to do some trenching and put in shoring or, additional things that you need to do. There's a possibility that they'll claim the reason they didn't mark it is that it's for future use, that it's not actually abandoned. Just to put, I've had that happen a couple times. And to reiterate what the previous commenters about the issue with abandoned, unclaimed, or future use line is that you have to treat it as if it's live because it's a conduit and you have no way of determining without some exploratory methodology if it is in use. I want to speak specifically to Navigate LA since apparently this is something maybe others are unfamiliar with. Not only on Navigate LA, that's run by the Bureau of Engineering, Department of Public Works, is their maps for storm drain and sewer, but there is also a substructure map that is available to the public that you can click on, and there are additional substructures indicated, typically associated with water and or electrical. So it is a great resource. Because I'm an emergency response, it is a resource that I use in the field, in addition to calling in emergency USA dig tickets. So I just wanted everybody to know, please look into it. Also know that LA County has stood up a similar program. I do know for sure they have it for storm drain because I've had some overlap with it. So do some research on that. And that ends my comments, and thank you for your time.
So Nate, isn't it also a condition of the permit in LA for you to go to that site, correct?
Yes, it is. I just didn't want to push that back. If you pull a permit, it asks for you to use that site to locate utilities because they will not be coming out to mark, sewer and storm drain for you. That's how you find those utilities.
Thank you.
Wayne, are there any additional comments on the webinar?
Yes, our next comment is from Ian Aaron. Yeah, just.
Ian Veneris, PG&E. To answer the question on the screen, I think we've had a lot of near misses regarding our critical high priority facilities, specifically our natural gas transmission lines. We've discovered multiple instances of previous excavation damage where we've had up to 80% of the wall thickness of these pipes, which carry, 600 plus PSI natural gas, removed by, farming equipment, presumably. It often happens in agricultural areas. So I think those are kind of maybe two areas where we could maybe focus some additional training, specifically around critical facilities, the legal requirement to perform an on-site field meet. And also, if we could continue the good work that we've done in terms of reaching out to agricultural communities, farmers specifically, and letting them know about the expectation with ACE tickets and, how they only have to call us once a year and we can show them where everything is. But really kind of giving us the opportunity to let them know about these critical facilities and remind them of their importance and how best to operate around them. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Our next comment is from Dorothy Bergman.
Dorothy, you can provide your comment now. Dorothy, we do not yet hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you. I am Dorothy Bergman. I'm from Southern California, Edison. We are both an owner operator, and some recent incidents we have found as an excavator is when we are excavating, we are coming across and hitting unmarked privately owned solar farm facilities within the public right of way. And when we have hit these, we then have to search around to see if there's any phone numbers that we can call to find out who to contact because they are not marked. And the answers we are getting is they are not going to mark. They will wait until we hit them, but then that puts us down until it's resolved. So, and when we come across those, of course, we're going to stop and try not to hit. But when we do hit, that has to happen. And their response, similar to what was commented before, is they'll just wait till they are hit. That is very disconcerting for us. That's not how it's supposed to be. It doesn't keep our people safe or our contractors safe. We do not know what we're going through. And, once we realize it is solar farms, to say that we have to wait and call them in, and that's when they'll mark. We're not sure how to get through to them. We will then take some educational data out to them from any of the notification centers that they have and try to have a discussion with them, but the discussion seems to not go anywhere. So that's some of the recent incidents and emergencies that we have been involved with. Thank you. Yes.
May I just suggest to the last speaker that the USB, the Underground Safety Board, does have a complaint-driven process. And if they're experiencing situations like that, that sounds like a great example to file a complaint to the board. Little promotion for the Underground Safety Board. You're welcome.
Appreciate that.
Yes, at the end of the presentation, we will be sharing some additional resources as well about how you can stay involved, including how you can contact the board.
I'm happy about the new acronym, USB. Thanks. You know that's.
You don't use
Brittany?
I started using it.
Colin, you started something.
Great. Were there any additional comments from any of the comments that we've heard on the from our webinar participants? Any discussions for any of those comments? Okay, I think we have additional hands raised.
There are no additional hands raised.
We do not have any additional hands raised. So it looks like you.
I don't know if you wanted a general comment. One of the things that we didn't touch on, that I just started thinking about was, and it's been touched on, every contractor that's gonna touch that ground has to have a USA. And that just adds more of a workload to a locator all day long. If there's any way, the law is very clear, and I think it's good, but if I'm gonna duplicate a ticket that another contractor's on, we should be able to, at least from a locator's perspective, there should be a process where they could be identified as two contractors working on the exact same location. Because we usually share the same brackets when we're going out there to do it, but that could minimize the number of tickets or number of times a locator has to respond to the same location.
Yeah.
So it does, when they generate a ticket at one address and then somebody else does the same address, it'll come up with like a similar address pins. It'll show us kind of a telltale, like there's somebody else
But
there or not, but we still have to respond. If it's been 3 weeks, I'm not gonna just close it as marked because it's been 3 weeks, traffic.
I mean,
construction.
unless you as the contractors want to say the marks are great.
Yeah.
You don't need to come out. We will be more than happy to not
There's
go out
there's a
there.
big swing of liability on
Yeah.
us or you as just be like, yeah, good enough. It is a lot more work. It'd be nice if they were all done at the same day.
But I know a lot of times we're partnering with another contractor.
Yeah.
I'll go out there and I'll field the job and I'll put both my marks down and his.
Yeah.
They still call it in, but now that it's an identical USA from two separate companies.
That's a perfect scenario.
I mean, if it's the same day, then yes, we will,
Yeah.
or
Yeah, what you
within
guys
it.
did is a lot of where we'll go out mark it, then we get our operator, who's the owner operators,
Saw
who has to have
cutter.
them. Then our saw cutters, it's all 3-4 weeks apart on the same exact job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If they're within a day or two of each other, then no, I'm not gonna roll out on it again, but yeah, 3 weeks
Especially if
is
it's
a
a
little.
3
too
month
much.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the flip side, though, I think it's important to maximize, to make every contractor, regardless if it's one project and there's 10 contractors working on the job, I still think all 10 contractors should be calling and thanking for a
Yes,
second.
they
That's
do.
been the state's
Yeah.
policy for a long
Yeah.
time.
Yeah,
Everyone has to have their own. ticket.
Exactly.
And they need to have their own pre-marks too. We do still get ones from contractors that will call in their ticket, but just think that they don't need to put their identifier down on it. Because the primaries have already done it and we won't accept that.
And
Yeah.
that makes sense.
that's more and more every day. There's less,
Piggybacking.
well, there's less wording on the USA marks anymore. There's no dates, there's no ticket numbers, there's no contractor date. It just says USA.
Yeah.
And it'll say 80 feet by 2,000 feet or whatever, but it could be for anybody.
Yeah.
You don't know. And that's the problem when you have another contractor working inside of your area. If you have a signal light company working on this intersection, but you're doing 6,000 feet, is it yours or is it your contractor's? And that's the thing that I think I noticed the most is that's getting worse, is pre-identifiers. They check the boxes saying that they are doing that, but they're not. There's no accountability. I can't make a phone call and turn this guy in because it's not gonna do anything.
Yeah, I think probably clarification with training about what primaries, secondaries, and even additional ones need to be doing. Would probably help the situation.
Thanks for bringing that back here.
Yeah.
Great.
No problem.
Thank you. I just want to check Rain and see if there was anybody who raised their hand during this discussion that we were having in the room here.
There are no hands raised. Stop.
Great, thank you. So that is the end of our discussion points. I don't want to open a broad discussion here, but if there's anything that we have talked about today, any of these discussion points that anybody feels like there was something that was missed that they would like to add before we adjourn, please let it be known now.
You have a hand raised from Mike.
Great, Michael.
Thank you. I think this is the idea about is coordinating with all our stakeholders to train and education is so really important. And like I said, we're willing, California Regional Common Ground Alliance, we're willing to be a big part of that. And for everybody that's on the call, if you know, it seems like there's a lot of great comments, a lot of concern. And I would encourage you to go to our website, maybe send an email, not necessarily to join, but because I do want to put together some sort of committee or panel of experts that we can share information with the USB here. So if you're interested, reach out to us and we can add you in moving forward. So like I said, I think this is a great program, and CARGA is already kind of the spot where everybody's together. And if you're not a part of it, maybe you should be with all the concern I hear. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Michael. No additional hands on right. Member Johnson, would you like to make any closing remarks?
I want to say thank you guys for participating. The more input you provide to us, the easier our job would be in getting something out that everyone agrees with. One of the things when we started CARGA was that we wanted a consensus with everybody. Because what you don't agree, then at least what would you know, what is it that you will be okay with in the interim? And so with your input and information and your knowledge in the field, because a lot of these things about even abandoned lines and what the impacts are and some suggestions, collaborations, I think would help us in the long run. How many locators can we hire? How many tickets? Because I know that you're up to what, 3,000 now, 3 million tickets or something like that now.
No, we're still under 2. We haven't hit 2 yet.
So that's a lot. And from an operator perspective, you only are budgeted to hire so many people to deal with the expense side. And if you don't plan in advance, you're not going to have the money, the resources to do it. So I think, again, communication with amongst one another, letting us know your projects, how long or before you're going to start them, how long you need to get them done. And I think, remember, John's is working on the design phase of it on our large projects to kind of, help us in that aspect of the business. So I appreciate staff and the work you guys are doing. I definitely appreciate Jessica led this today because I wouldn't be able to do this. So, and then Colin, of course, USB. Go for it. So with that, thank you guys.
Yeah, great. So I will echo Member Johnson and thanking everybody for attending today's workshop and the lively discussions that we had today. We do plan to continue this conversation about coordinated statewide education and outreach in additional sessions throughout the year. So following today's workshop, the committee will analyze your contributions and prioritize the key topics that will form the focus of our future sessions. We encourage you to save the date for these proposed dates. Yes, okay. Which we will be promoting soon. And your ongoing participation and commitment are crucial as we continue to bring operators and excavators together to share insights and foster long-term collaboration that encourages safe excavation practices. So more information will be available about those sessions soon. And as I mentioned earlier, there are some ways that you can stay involved in the meantime. So you can sign up for our emails. So if you are in person, there is a sign-up sheet near the door. And if you are attending online, you can navigate to the sign-up page, which is shown on the slide. You can also follow Energy Safety on social media to stay up to date on news and upcoming events from the Underground Safety Board or the USB, as we are calling it. And if you do have further information that you want to share, you can email the committee at digboard@energysafety.ca.gov. Finally, please save the date for our next board meeting, which is scheduled for February 10th through 11th. It will be in person in Sacramento and virtual attendance will also be available. And with that, this workshop is adjourned.
Thank you.
Industry.
Yeah, you know, 18 months. Same month. All girls.
That was.
Yeah, the sun.
Thanks for me.
Hi. Workload permitting.
No.
At least online.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's worse.
Thank you. Yeah.
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 Someone